Hey, Michael here from Maximum Chips. Thanks for catching up with another video. I'm going to look at building a drill block, just a wooden block to put my drill bits in. I've been dealing with this thing for the last 10 years or so. Obviously it's pretty dusty and pretty ordinary looking, and many bits which are virtually the same sort of size and really hard to see sometimes. So what I thought I'd do is to make a drill block, and I've also got multiples of sizes, so I've got a few spare 4s and 3s and that sort of stuff, common ones that I use all the time and often break sort of thing, so it's just handy to have a couple around. Obviously this sort of stuff doesn't really help you with having extra ones on the side of that. So I was at Bunnings yesterday and picked up a couple of they had some 90 centimetre 900mm bits of pine. These were a couple of bucks each. They're just obviously some offcuts or something from some other jobs that they were doing. They seem nice and straight, nice end cap, nice end grain. So I picked up a couple of these. I've got another one down there. Sort of chosen this one just because of the nice grain. Obviously I'm going to be drilling into this a lot, and whereas with the other one, I'll just grab it off the floor. This sort of thing looks great, and I'll probably use it for something else, but I don't want to be drilling into it because obviously the grain of the wood, it's just going to push the drill bit around. I was going to do one big one with everything in it. I'll probably do a second one for the special bits like the dowel bits and the speed bores and those sorts of things, just so it's not so cumbersome to pick one up and move it around the shop if I need it to. So let's go to the sanding area, or the bins, and tidy this thing up a little bit and start laying it out. So we've hit it with the sander. As I said before, we were doing some 120 grit and then 180 grit just to give it a bit of a final edge. You probably don't need to do that sort of stuff with just a shop project like this, but why not make it look good, I guess. Timber feels good. Put some edges on it just to sort of, again, just to give that nice little extra finishing touch. And I want it to look good as well as being functional. So I've given it a dust down with a dry clean cloth, and just to sort of treat it a little bit, we're going to wax some, I'm just going to use some olive oil. Had plenty of that laying around in the pantry, so I'm just going to give it a couple of coats with some olive oil. Typically you just sort of put it on, you can either brush it on, I'm just going to wipe it on with a cloth, give it about 10 minutes to soak in, maybe give it another one after that, and then kind of see how quickly the oil stops going into the actual timber itself. As soon as you sort of see the oil sitting on top of the timber, you know that it's kind of full and you don't need to worry about putting another coat on. So probably going to do 2 at least, maybe 3, and we'll just see how we go. Cool. Just running a bead along it with the little plastic bottle. These bottles are super handy. There we go. You can get these from like a kitchen store or a culinary store, something like that. I get mine from the Dubbo culinary store, kitchen and culinary store down in Talbot Street. I think for one that size it's about $5, maybe $6, maybe $8, not quite sure. But around that sort of thing. Certainly not over $10 and not under $2. You can get them pretty cheap from the supermarket, like the Coles. They typically have like a red one for tomato sauce. I like the clear one for olive oil. And then you can just buy your olive oil in bulk and just put it into something like that, and it makes it nice and easy to cook on the barbie. So the ends is which you're going to suck up the most amount of oil. In timber, your grain runs this way, and so all these little bits and pieces at the end, that's an open thing, so that's going to absorb the most amount of oil compared to the side. So obviously once we finish marking this out, we're going to cut this, and I'll have to sand and treat the ends again, but that's something we'll just do once we work out where everything's going to go. I don't want to cut it up now and then find out that I've gone too short or too long and have to do it again anyway. So alright, so here we are. It's about 15 minutes later. The wood feels nice and dry. Yep, so we're just going to pop some more oil on, paying attention to how quickly it actually goes in. We'll just sort of leave it sit on top for a second before we give it a bit of a rub with the cloth. Yeah, I can actually feel that sort of sitting on top already, so I'm honestly feeling like that's probably enough. The wood's certainly not drinking it up and sucking it up as soon as I put it on there like it did last time. You can sort of see that I've put a fair bit on that end and it's still quite glossy on top. You can sort of still push it around, so I reckon 2, and again it's just a shop project. I'm really just sort of doing this so I can have a bit of a practice using this particular type of oil with some of the local pine, get a feel for how they work together and sort of give me a bit of a baseline for future projects. So here we are. Did a third coat of the oil, didn't bother filming it because it was basically putting oil on a piece of wood, which I think you've already seen twice before today. So what I've also started doing is marking it out. I've decided to go, so it's 60 mils across, about 2 inches across, probably 2.5 inches across, I guess. So I've got a line going down the middle and I just sort of mark that out, 30 mils in, and then just scribe that down, and then 15 either side of that. And then I've decided to go 20 mils in between each one, and I've just started going down with a center punch just to sort of mark off the areas for that. This little fella, I discovered these at a metalwork workshop that I was at last week for uni. This is not a center punch that you built with a hammer. It's actually an automatic one, so you just press down hard, and it does the punching itself, which is great because you can actually line it up really accurately. This one's got a fairly decent point on it. This one costs $8. Like I've seen them, the guy who had the one in Wagga Wagga, he got his from Gas World, and their cheapest one was about $25. I did actually see some on their online site that went up to $100 plus. Not quite sure what the difference is. Unfortunately, their website doesn't give you a great amount of detail on the products. It's got a lot of products on there, but it doesn't actually tell you a lot about what's going on between the two of them. Most products on the website don't have photos, so you can't even see that. And the way they work is pretty simple. I assume you can see this, yep. So just line him up, give it a push, whooshka. So I'll just go along and do this third rail. I'm doing, I think it was 16 across. Awesome. So it's belted those in. That'll give us a nice little starting point for drilling. The job now is to basically go along each one of these little points one by one and drill in, change, drill in, line them up. I've got a couple of markers. I'm going to try either a regular Sharpie, black Sharpie, or I've actually got an ultra fine one there. We'll see which one actually writes best on the wood. It's still a bit wet from that third coat. Yeah. So again, I just sort of did a quick couple of marks on the back. Ultra fine Sharpie at the top and just a regular fine tip Sharpie underneath, obviously. I think the ultra fine one looks better. Probably going to look a bit neater sort of thing. So I think I'll probably just stick with that rather than the regular fine one. Going through these, I have actually mapped out a little bit in my field notes how I wanted to sort of space them out. So for some, like the 1 mil, the 1.5, the 2 mil, I only need one each of those. Not quite sure how well that shows up. There you go, it's a bit better. 2.5, and then I'll sort of do a whole row of 3 and a whole row of 3.5, whole row of 4. And I've kind of based those multiple ones on what I've sort of got collected in the last couple of years since I've been doing this sort of work. Obviously, if I've got a few extra 4s lying around, then they're the ones that I've used a lot. You know, I know I hardly ever use a 7 mil or a 6.5 mil, so I only really need room for one of those. Whereas the 3.5 mils and the 4 mils, you use those quite a lot around the house for house type jobs. And we'll just see how it goes a bit later on, but I'm pretty comfortable with what we've sort of knocked up there. I'm going to do the first three actually with the 2.5 mil bit, because I'm pretty sure this particular drill certainly doesn't hold a 1 or a 1.5. Might not even hold, or it does hold a 2, because that's what I've got in there right now. So that's the first 3 done. It's in there pretty tight. So what I might end up doing is actually one step up. So for the 2 mil thing, do that with the 2.5. I want to see if this is a good idea or not. So that in theory is for the 2 hole. Yeah, that's much better. So what I'm going to do is basically step up one. So for the 2.5 hole, I'll drill that with a 3, and for the 3 I'll drill that with a slightly big one. I've got a 3.2 there, and so on and so forth. So just to give that a little bit of wiggle room, not too much obviously. I'm never going to get the 4 in here obviously. Yeah, that's the way to go. Alright, so we have finished drilling the holes, and you might have noticed that I sort of stopped filling the holes as I was going along, because what I was starting to notice was the actual drill bit itself was rubbing up against the previous drill bits, and went up to 10 because that's the biggest size. That's the biggest size drill bit that I've currently got, and I've left some markings there and some obviously the center punches, and yeah, just some blank ones there for later on should I ever have to get anything bigger. That timber looks great, doesn't it, with the stain or the oil rubbed into it. So that's done. Clean this up a little bit. What I want to do now is to just mark off down there. We'll cut that off, sand it, oil it, and we're done. Alright, so we have pretty much finished this little drill bit holder, and I think it's come out pretty good. I've sealed off both ends now, and let the oil seep in a bit, and this one's pretty much dry, and I'll get around to filling this up in a minute. In the meantime, I grabbed another piece, exactly the same piece. In fact, it's actually a continuation of this bit, so I want the grains to line up nicely, and I'll use this bit shortly for things like the spade bits and stuff like that. Most of them have a standard base. I took I think it's about 7 mils across on the hexagonal, so I used my 7.5 mil drill bit to make all those holes. Yeah, happy again with the way that went together. Again, described the 3 lines, and then just went across with the automatic center punch, and yeah, makes a nice neat job fairly quickly, and yeah, so happy with that. Alright, so I'm probably going to set this out as a separate video. What we've done today is we've taken a nice piece of pine, treated it with some olive oil just to give it a nice bit of a stain and a look, and we've gone through and drilled our holes, marked out our holes, drilled them. We stepped up one, so for the 3.5mm hole we used the 4mm drill bit, and so for the 5mm hole we used the 5.5mm drill bit. That just makes it a little bit easier to get in and out of the wood, and yeah, and that's worked out pretty well. Got some room at the end for some bigger drill bits later on in the future, but at the moment my largest one is a 10mm drill bit, so that's as far as I went for today. What I wanted to show you is I currently have all my drill bits. They kind of got mixed up. I went and tipped over the drill bit holder at one stage, and so they're all now mixed up. One little trick that I found at a workshop last week was using a Vernier Caliper. We were actually using the micrometer at the workshop that I was at. I'm always trying to find the sizes of my drill bits. They're sort of etched on the bottom of the drill bit, on the very not that bit, not on the end bit, but down here somewhere, which is great if you've got awesome light and your drill bit's brand new and it hasn't rusted over. But as soon as you've had it for about 5 minutes, it turns like this, and you can no longer work out whether it's the 4.5 or the 4 or the 3.8 or what it is. So what we were using at the workshop last week was a simple micrometer. Like I said, I managed to pick up a digital Vernier Caliper. Now these can be used for measurements up to, I'm going to guess, 1/100th of a mil. Yeah, so 1/100th of a mil. The micrometer will go to 1/1000th of a mil. I really mostly need 1/10th, so this thing is more than accurate enough. You can learn how to read the Vernier Caliper, and I've got another one over there which I do use sometimes for doing certain things, but honestly now that I've got this little fella with its digital readout, I'm probably not going to bother ever touching that one again. So turn it on, push it down, zero it if you need to, and then it's simply a matter of you use this little fella to roll it back, pop your drill bit in there. It's 5.4, so that's probably going to be my 5.5mm drill bit. It's never going to be absolutely spot on. You're sort of, again, looking for a rough guide. This one, 4.45, so that's probably my 4.5mm drill bit. So this one I know is a 1mm, and there we go, 0.99. Hoping you can read that. So yeah, rather than me trying to guess, I'm just going to now fill this little drill bit holder up with my calipers. I just wanted to pass that on as a separate little tip. Whereas this guy goes up to 150 mils, 0 to 150 mils. It was about $40 from JCar, I believe. I'll try and put a link in the description. But for one of the digital readout, I thought this was outstanding value. Might not be the most accurate one down to the thousandths of a millimeter or even to 100th of a millimeter, but when you're only working with tenths, that is more than enough. So let's put this whole thing together. So done. Awesome putting that together with this little fella. That's come up really great, and it's going to be so much easier than trying to muck around with this plastic thing, getting them right, getting them wrong, having them all in the one spot. So that's it. That's our drill bit holder project. Hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to the video channel, Maximum Chips. Check us out on Facebook. Check out the Instagram feed. That's probably the most popular one, Instagram/Maximum Chips. You can also catch us on Twitter And yeah, please leave a comment below. Any questions, any comments would be absolutely fantastic. Hope you've enjoyed it. My name's Michael, and this has been Maximum Chips. Cheers.